Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I do have a presentation with some forecast slides to give to you tonight. Had a series of questions come to me about how we forecast and what's included and why that information is included. And so I thought we'd show you some amendments to how we can look at the budget forecasting process and also inform you of some new information on our budget, which is pretty significant, that came in over the last week. So the first slide, Jeremy. Just so everybody has a concept of what our current forecast includes, the bottom line and the number one question we've been getting is that our forecasting method that we've been using assumes that all of the concessions that our employees have previously agreed to remain in place. And when we do that, it paints a fairly good picture in terms of the bottom line on our ending emergency reserve. And that's the numbers that you see before you. We achieved the council's minimum policy of 2 months of cash flow in the reserve. And at the end of 2012-13, due to the dissolution of redevelopment, we received a large one-time sum of money in that year. But as you go forward, that reserve continues to improve, because through this period of time that's on the chart before you, going through fiscal year 2017-18, the city's receiving funds from Measure M. And so when you add those plus the one-time monies, our reserve looks pretty healthy. But we do not have contracts that are with our employees that go all the way through the period of time that's shown on this chart. So we felt maybe we should adjust that to reflect that the assumption should only include the period of time that those contracts are in play. So next slide. Oop. So if we were to make those adjustments using the current forecast but adjusting downward, assuming that the concessions only remain in place for the term of the various contracts, you see that that reserve goes down a bit, and that just basically means that, you know, we can't assume that people will pay those concessions going beyond their current term of their contract. Next slide. And that's the difference between how we currently forecast and if you forecast based on the term of the contracts. And the bigger impact goes further out. We do have contracts currently that go through 2015. Yes, sir?
Councilwoman Harris.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Is there a way to show us the difference with Measure M monies?
Excellent question. We will bring that to you in another slide at the next council meeting, but we can show Measure M, what portion of each bar on there, so that you can see it.
That would be good to see. Thanks.
Sure. That's a good question. Thank you. Next slide. The significant new news that's come in the last week or so has to do with the announcement I made at the last city council meeting. That had to do with the state controller's office coming in to audit the actions taken by the city of Vacaville during the 2011 year, which is the time that the state put in the bill 1484 that said if you took actions during a year prior to the legislation being effective, where the city received funds from the redevelopment agency or you transferred property, that the state could mandate that those funds that were paid by the agency to the city be clawed back. And lo and behold, there was one action that we took. It had to do with property that was purchased by the city and then given to the redevelopment agency, and essentially a loan was made between the city and the agency to pay back the money for the property purchase. And the current value of that loan that was paid back was $3.814 million. And the draft of the comments from the state controller's office is that they will mandate that the city general fund pay back to the taxing agencies $3.8 million. And so that is in draft form. I don't expect the draft to change, and we don't expect that the city will be able to fight the clawback provisions, at least as far as I can see right now. And so it's logical to think that our forecast should start looking at including us making that payment in 2014-15. So you see that drop. and the drop brings us below the City Council's adopted reserve policy of at least 16%. And yes, sir.
Quick question on that. So this is the first time I've heard that we're paying back a loan of $3.8 million. If we're receiving one-time funding from sale of property and ROP and those type of things, rather than finance this and spread it out over however many years and have to pay a larger amount and detrimentally affect the reserve, why aren't we using one-time monies to pay a one-time clawback and just pay that off?
We are proposing to pay that clawback off in 2014-15 in one-time lump sum.
One-time monies, okay,
yes.
All right.
And then ultimately, sometime in the future, years from now, the redevelopment agency will pay that money back, but we have no clue when that will happen. So
Okay.
it was a prepayment on a loan that we did during that period of time where...
So we are going to use one-time funding, because what I heard a second ago is we were going to be making payments on it.
No, we're proposing it'd have to be paid in a one-time lump sum, and that money, that one-time lump sum of $3.8 million, gets paid to the taxing agencies. Okay.
The other question I have is that these forecasts and assumptions as it relates to the revenue, it includes the $7.2 million from the redevelopment disillusion this year and the $2 million next year?
It was $7 million last year and $2 million.
So roughly
year before.
$9 million is in there. So
it's already, that is in there.
that is included.
Yes,
so
sir.
That's a one-time money.
Those
And then-
one-time funds are included in the
Okay.
reserve, yes.
I think it's important to know that. The second part of that is, I don't know, a month or so ago or 2 weeks ago, the council made a decision to change some of the public policy. It relates to vehicle replacement, deferred maintenance. Did you calculate those increases into the budget at all?
No, sir. That forecast adjustment to spend additional monies in the proposed current fiscal year, which would be 2014-15, that policy was council wants us to start looking at using those one-time funds, but they didn't set the exact rate. That gets set with the budget, and it would be carried forward in the forecast. Haven't approved anything yet, so no, that's not shown here. So if we have to, assuming we're spending more money on repairing our failing equipment, it's not reflected here yet. So that's why I'm showing you this. There is an anticipated increased cost to spend money on things that we've deferred maintenance on for so long, and that's not reflected here. So next slide. So here's the difference between where we are with the current forecast with concessions, with the current contracts in play versus what happens with the clawback. You can see as we move forward in the next few years, we just barely get to where we'd like to be reserve-wise in 2016, but trending forward, it starts to go down. And then after 2018, Measure M funds go away, and it could get significantly worse unless there's some other change in the environment. I mean, there's always the potential for us to have better than planned revenues. Interestingly enough, we're just starting to see the effects of what might happen with the fourth quarter on sales tax. It's usually the anticipated quarter results that are the most significant because it includes the holiday season, and we anticipate those numbers to come in a way that would be very close to us meeting projections for this year, which means no extra gift at the end of the year. So nothing surprising in terms of forecasting on sales tax. Property tax was a little bit disappointing, but I think in the end we're probably going to come pretty close to what we projected for this current fiscal year. Next slide. So add the two together, the current contracts with the clawback. This is the slide that's kind of scary for me, and that is even with Measure M in place and not being shown as part of that bar, looking out a little bit further into the chart in 2018-19 when Measure M goes away, our reserve goes down to 1.5%. So these are the kinds of things that we need to be looking at. I know that it's not popular and that it's a difficult situation, but when you look at where this could go, our current revenues do not cover our current costs for operation. Therefore, we are dependent on Measure M revenues to keep the city afloat. And so, absent that revenue, we need to be doing more things to get our spending in line with our revenues operationally, and that's about a $3 million a year proposition as far as I can see, and that doesn't include additional costs for equipment and buildings. So maybe it's a $4 or $5 million proposition, I don't know, but I just wanted to let you know we're trying to tackle this as we move forward in the budget. I think this is the last slide, isn't it, Jeremy? Oh, that's just the comparison. If we put the claw back in and just put in what we have with our current contracts, this is the difference between the two. And then this one only goes out to 17, 18. So let's go back to the last one. I think that's really the best picture. It's not a rosy picture, and I want to let you know that we still need to be vigilant in doing what we're doing in terms of being fiscally prudent. And we have increased costs for healthcare and retirement plans. We have a need to address increased costs for gasoline, other operational costs that go up. The economy is improving. That's a really good sign. Unfortunately, we need to see much better improvement in the economy to bolster these numbers in the long term. And so we all need to be thinking about what happens when Measure M goes away and preparing for that. So I'd be happy to answer any additional questions.